Hey everybody, this is AP Macro, and what I'm doing here is a review of major graphs, and what we're doing in this video is the ASAD model. Guys, this is the most important model in all of macroeconomics. In fact, I like to say that the ASAD model is a model of the macro economy. We basically can look at everything that we really care about in macroeconomics. And what are those things? Changes in the price level, that's going to be the vertical axis. So let me go ahead and get that labeled, okay? So the price level is the vertical axis. We care a whole lot about that. Price level goes up, that's inflation. Price level goes down, that's deflation. We very much care about stability of the price level. That's the vertical axis. The horizontal axis. Now, basically what we label this is real GDP, which is output. Okay, real GDP, which is output. Sometimes you'll see the word real output. So those all work. Output, real GDP. I like to also just kind of remind students that really we're using the vertical axis to measure a lot of things, okay? So what I like to do a lot of times is say, hey, we're measuring the quantity of AS. We're also measuring the quantity of AD. And what we are using this axis for is seeing the equilibrium real GDP, okay? That's kind of like technically what I really like to say. And guys, sometimes being technical actually enlightens a little bit, okay? So showing you fully what we think of this horizontal axis, those are the things that we're seeing it as. However, in any type of test situation, just putting real GDP or output or real output, that works, okay? That's my horizontal axis. And of course, I care a lot about real GDP, or I mean macroeconomists care a lot about real GDP. The other thing economists care a ton about is the unemployment rate, or what's happening to unemployment. And guys, that is inversely related to this one, right? So if we're going that way, the unemployment rate is decreasing, right? So real GDP is increasing, the unemployment rate is going down. If we're going this way, okay, unemployment rate is going up, real GDP is going down, right? So unemployment is inversely related to this horizontal axis. So the three things that we care the most about, price level, real GDP, and unemployment, we get a view of all three of those things with this model. That's why it's so important. Now, let's label our curves here. This upward sloping curve is the short run aggregate supply curve. What I like to tell students is that is your total production curve, okay? Maybe call it the short run total production curve. So I'm going to put that right here. So total production. I think that's super important to understand that because guys, let's be honest. Aggregate supply is a little bit jargony, okay? It's a little bit like jargon we don't fully understand. It's not terms we use. But total production, that I think is a little bit easier for students to understand. The downward sloping line is aggregate demand. Now what I like to say is that aggregate demand is total spending. So this line right here is our total spending line. So I'm going to put total spending. So that's just to make it a little bit more understandable to students. To make sure, hey, look, there's a total spending curve, there's your total production curve, all right? So aggregate supply, aggregate demand. Now why is the SRAS upward sloping? The answer is because wages or input costs, specifically wages, are sticky in the short run, okay? Once wages have fully adjusted to changes in the price level, we will go back to our LRAS, which is going to be a vertical curve, which I'm going to put on here in just a second. But don't lose it, guys. The big thing is, why is the SRAS upward sloping? Because wages, nominal wages that is, are sticky in the short run. They don't fully adjust to the price level right off the bat, and that stickiness, that lagging behind of changes in the price level, and that's the language I like to use. The fact that wages lag behind changes in the price level is the reason that is upward sloping. AD. Why is that downward sloping, okay? There's two big reasons. One is the real wealth effect, okay? With the real wealth effect, what that's saying, guys, is when like the price level goes up, your real wealth, part of your wealth is in financial assets called currency and checking accounts. And guys, the purchasing power of your wealth held in those two asset classes, currency and checking accounts, goes down. So again, here's the idea, guys. Price level goes up, that's the price of goods and services go up. Your real wealth, the amount of goods and services your wealth can purchase, goes down because some of your wealth, again, are held in currency and checking account, and they don't keep up with changes in the price level. Real wealth goes down, your consumption is going to go down, AD is going to go down, so you see an inverse relationship between the price level and AD, right? So again, price level goes up, AD, the quantity of AD is going to decrease because of that real wealth effect. The other reason is what's called the interest rate effect, okay? Price level goes up, Hey, that's the stuff we buy, that's the price of stuff we buy going up. We're going to need more money. We're going to demand more money. When we demand more money, that's going to drive interest rates up because the price of money is going to go up. When the interest rate goes up, investment, another type of spending, guys, is going to go down. Quantity of AD is going to go down, okay? So again, price level goes up, consumption goes down because of the real wealth effect, which is part of AD. Investment goes down because of the real interest rate effect, or the interest rate effect, we should just call it that, the interest rate effect. And that's why the AD curve is downward sloping. Now, this is the intersection point. That is where we want to think the economy is always at, or at least that's where we're heading all the time, is the intersection point between the SRAS and the AD. So let me put my dot right here. It's fine for an AP macro course to just say, hey, that's where we're always at. I like to be a little bit technical. It's basically where we're at or where the economy is always headed, okay? Every once in a while we can get off of that equilibrium point, but then market forces will drive us to that equilibrium point. So I'm going to put E sub 0 dash 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 dash. Hey, remember, equilibrium real GDP, YE. So where these two curves intersect is our equilibrium GDP, and of course, this would be the corresponding price level. We are always on the SRAS or AD, okay? That's kind of the way we should approach this graph. Hey, we're always on these two curves. Now again, there's a curve I've already mentioned that's not on my graphic yet. That's the LRAS, the long run average supply curve, or the long run total production curve. What it's saying is how much will you produce in the long run, i.e. once wages have fully adjusted to the price level. So once wages are fully adjusted to the price level, how much will you produce? And guys, that is how much you're going to produce is going to be basically your full employment level of output. Sometimes called your potential output. I really like the term full employment level of output. So let's put that on the graph. Now I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use red because we are not always on our LRAS. I like to actually call the LRAS line a reference line. I think that's what's really important. Now, you might be expecting me to put it right there through the E, but again, we are not always on our LRAS, and so I think it would be better if I just didn't show our economy on our LRAS right now. I could put it to the right. If I put it to the right, I would have a recessionary gap, because this is where I'm actually at. I would have an output level below my full employment level of output. If I put it over here, okay, this would be my full employment level of output. I'm actually producing a level of output that is more than that. I'm producing more than my full employment level of output. This would be known as an inflationary gap, okay? So let me go ahead, and I'm going to actually do the recessionary gap for this video. Okay, so I'll put it right here. It is a vertical line, okay? That is super important. The LRAS is vertical, okay? What that is saying is, in the long run, i.e. once wages are fully adjusted to changes in the price level, we will produce at YF, at our full employment level of output. And one more time, we are not on the LRAS in my diagram, and that's perfectly at. Where's our economy at? It's right here at Y sub 0, we're at YE. We're producing this level of output, not our full employment level of output. Again, this right here would be a recessionary gap. Now, make sure we're clear. If our equilibrium, which is where this and this intersect, is left of the LRAS, we are in a recession. So anything left of the LRAS curve is a recession, a recessionary gap. If our equilibrium, our intersection of these two curves, is to the right of the LRAS, if it's on the right side of the LRAS, we are in boom time, guys. That is an inflationary gap, okay? And we're going to have inflationary pressures if that happens. Let's talk through the recessionary gap that I drew right now, okay? So I've got a recessionary gap. What would happen, guys? Now notice, I didn't say what would happen in the long run. I just said what would happen. Well, what might happen is our government and our central bank might want to intervene. Our government might want to intervene with expansionary fiscal policy, or our central bank, i.e. the Fed in the United States, might want to intervene with expansionary monetary policy. So what we would do is stimulative or expansionary policies. By the way, stimulative, expansionary, synonyms, right? We can use those interchangeably. So the fiscal policy or monetary policy could be implemented to try to get us back to the LRAS, okay? Both fiscal policy and monetary policy focus on AD for the most part. Let me say it this way, guys. Monetary policy focuses exclusively on AD. Changing the money supply changes how much you can spend, okay? So, guys, monetary policy focuses very much AD. Fiscal policy, kind of like the main way we approach it is it focuses on AD. There actually are a few fiscal policy things that we can do, focus on AS, but in general, the default is fiscal policy, guys, mainly focuses on AD, right? Think about lowering taxes, getting more disposable income, consumption goes up, that's part of AD, right? More consumption. Government purchases, guys, that's spending, guys. Government spending, that's definitely AD, right? Transfer payments, gets your disposable income up, gets more spending, right? So in general, fiscal and monetary policy, AD, these are demand management policies, and what we would do is shift it to the right? Increase AD by doing this expansionary or stimulative policies, okay, to close that recessionary gap. But we might do nothing. We might just do nothing. We might wait for the long run to happen. So what's going to happen in the long run? Well, we've got cyclically unemployed people. That's super important. If we are left of YF, that means we're not at full employment level of output. We're not at full employment. If we're not at full employment, then we have cyclical unemployment, right? So we've got cyclically unemployed people, and we'd have to wait until they would accept a lower wage. And eventually, in the long run, they would accept the lower wage. They'd accept whatever wage they have to in the long run to get back to work. Now, when those wages go down, that is a cost of production going down. So it's going to shift our total production line. That is so important, guys. If we're letting the long run take place, if we're doing nothing, if we're not intervening, we're waiting for wages to change, the curve that's going to shift in the long run is the SRAS. And how would it shift? It would shift to the right. It would shift this way. That'd be an increase in total production because, again, wages are going down. Why are wages going down? Because we have cyclically unemployed people. We had a surplus of workers, and eventually those workers are going to accept a lower wage. SRAS shifts to the right, back to the LRAS curve. Now, we can't end this video just with that. We've got to talk a little bit about an inflationary gap. Let me get rid of that red line, just like that. Now, inflationary gap, that means our LRAS curve is left of where our equilibrium is. Where's our equilibrium? That's where the SRAS and AD are intersecting. Here is my LRAS, that is my YF. Now I've got a inflationary gap. Now let's talk about why it's an inflationary gap. We are producing more than what we can produce at full employment level of output. How are we doing that, guys? Guys, if we're at YF, we have no cyclically unemployed people. The only way to produce more than this is to actually dip into the frictionally and structurally unemployed people. Now guys, when you start dipping into the structural and frictionally unemployed people, remember there's not many of them anyway, okay? Then that's going to put a lot of upward pressure on wages. The way we normally say this, guys, is if I try to produce over here, the labor market is getting super tight. Okay, now I gotta explain that for just a second. If the labor market is getting super tight, what is super tight? That's the opposite of having slack, right? If you have slack in your rope, that's excess rope. If something's becoming super tight, you don't have like excess rope, right? You don't have excess anything. If we try to produce over here, our labor market is becoming super tight, right? So that means we don't have workers. There's not enough workers available. We want to produce over here, but there's not enough workers. Our labor force, again, is super tight. Guys, it's a rope that's super tight. There's no excess rope. There's no excess workers. Okay, that's that analogy at play right there. So there's no workers. It's like a shortage of workers. What's going to happen to the price of labor in this situation? It's going to go up. Again, the only way we can produce more than our full employment level of output is by dipping into the frictionally and structurally unemployed, because we have zero cyclical unemployment, and that's going to put really intense upward pressure on wages. I hope that makes sense to you. The big thing, guys, is shortage of available workers, and that means the price of labor is going up, wages go up. Guys, that's a cost of production. Again, what shifts in the long run? The SRAS curve. It would shift to the left, right, back to the LRAS, and we would have that intersection point of all three curves, which we always have if we're in the long run, which makes me, oh my gosh, I lost my marker, but I got another one. So, which makes one more point I want to make sure that we're clear on. Guys, if we have an intersection point right there, an equilibrium point between those two curves, which is our equilibrium point, and it's not on our LRAS, we're not in the long run, right? That is a short-run equilibrium. We will not stay there forever. Just like that recessionary gap. Same thing, guys. We weren't on the LRAS. That was a short-run equilibrium. We will not stay there forever. We could have done monetary fiscal policy or let the long run happen. Here, let the long run happen might be what we do, but I didn't talk about this just to make sure we get it in. We could, again, do monetary and fiscal policy. Not let the long run happen. Not wait for those wages to go up. Once again, fiscal monetary policy, they focus on AD. What would we do if we're in an inflationary gap, right? Really, this is boom times. We would try to contract the economy, right? So what would we do? We do contractionary fiscal policy, contractionary monetary policy. From a monetary policy standpoint, decrease the money supply, try to get the interest rates to go up to decrease spending, right? Fiscal policy, we'd raise taxes, lower government spending, lower transfer payments to, again, shift AD to the left to bring us back. So again, what we can do is intervene with our demand management, or we can just let the long run happen, i.e. do nothing, let the wages change, and when the wages change, what do they shift every single time? The SRAS curve. That is your review of major graph, the ASAD model, the most important model in all of macroeconomics. We'll see you in the next video.